Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am Ben, and in this video I want to talk about what differentiates this guitar from this guitar. Let's get into it. Well, thank you everyone for clicking on this video. Now I know some of you eagle-eyed viewers already spotted the fake guitar, but this video is not really for you. This is more for the curious or the people that want to learn a little bit more about how to spot a genuine counterfeit Gibson guitar. Let me give you guys a real quick backstory on why I'm making this video. So for the past year or so, Temu's hit me up wanting to do like a partnership kind of deal, and I've searched around on their platform and I haven't really found anything that fits into my narrative dreams of this channel. Again, they hit me up and they said, you know, can you give it some more thought, maybe sit on it for a few days and just get back to us and let us know. And so due process, I did decide to sit on it for a few days, and the day I was going to log in and tell them I wasn't really interested, again, I saw this thread pop up that was like, hey, check out this Gibson, real or fake. And I was thinking about it, and I get that alert nearly every day, whether it's from a Facebook Gibson group or everythingsg.com or maybe Les Paul forum. There is no shortage of people selling counterfeit Gibson guitars. So the light bulb went off in my head and I immediately hit up Temu and told them my intentions. I wanted to compare a Chibson Les Paul with a Gibson Les Paul. I also told them they need to provide the guitar and $500. They said, no, we'll give you the guitar and $100, but in return we need you to do a video on this guitar. To which I replied, okay, I'll do it for $100, but you need to agree to my terms as laid out in my previous email. Now those terms were that I would compare this guitar, the Chibson, with its authentic Gibson counterpart, and in return I would give them a video review on this guitar by itself, and I would put some links for purchase in the description, as well as a few other qualifiers, like I can't list another promoted product within like 24 hours of this review, and I don't intend to because I don't really do too much of those, to be honest with you. And that was kind of it. The reply was an official sounds good. So my goal is to get this comparison video out first, and then maybe later today or in a couple days I will release the review of the Chibson Les Paul, or actually what this one's known as is a Vicer's Les Paul. Check that out, that's kind of funny, right? To be honest, I'm not really even sure I'm gonna get the $100 after this video, but I feel like this is an important video to make and maybe more like a PSA for me. So I mentioned how daily I see this post about, you know, is this guitar real or is it fake? And thankfully there's no shortage of guitar experts out there that can look at this guitar and within 10 seconds have 50 things that make it not authentic. But I think a lot of times the question that's being asked when people are asking if a guitar is real or fake is, has the equipment on this guitar always been fake? Like they notice something's off about it. They know what maybe say a 2024 Les Paul should look like. They can pull that up on Gibson, but this one looks a little bit different. Is this stuff fake? And so I think what I want to focus on in this video is maybe emphasizing the point of things don't really change that often. So let's dive into it. Oh wait, no, not this logo. Let's fix that. So this is actually a sticker that is on top of this guitar here. And I can just put this little razor blade under there and watch this. And look at that, they actually sell this guitar on Temu like that. It just has a sticker that says Vicer's, but what's actually up there is a fake Gibson logo. So it seems like a lot of people that have these authenticity questions about guitars are getting photos of them. Maybe they're a little bit obscure, or maybe there's just not a lot of photos, and so they inevitably ask the question of, is this guitar real or fake? And I totally get it. When you see a smoking deal on a guitar, it's like you want to click the purchase button, but you got to be a little bit cautious. My first advice would be to ask for more photos. And if that person ever denies sending you the photos that you ask for, or just doesn't want to do it, I would just cut and bail at that moment, because if somebody wants a close-up photo of, you know, the B string tuner backside or whatever, I'm going to send it to them because, first of all, it takes 15 seconds, and if it alleviates any concerns that they have, then of course it's worth it. A pretty easy thing you can do is take notice of the case situation. Let's say you're looking at a Les Paul Custom and it's going for $600 and it has no case. Well, why doesn't it have a case? Every single Gibson Les Paul Custom has a case. Unless you're dealing with Slash's Guitar Tech and he's sold off the cases and he keeps all the guitars in a giant flight case, there's not really any reason to not have a genuine case. So that'd be the first check mark that I would look for. Another quick thing to look for if you're checking out generic photos that kind of show the whole guitar is check very closely for fret nibs. Now if you're a guitar noob and you don't really know what fret nibs are, well, it's this little rise in the binding around the neck that meets the fret. Now here's a guitar that has great fret nibs, and here's another guitar that has some missing fret nibs, but evidence that they were once there. Now that being said, not every single Gibson electric guitar has fret nibs. If it's maybe a guitar without binding, you're not really going to get fret nibs. But if the guitar has binding, I'd be willing to bet that more than 95% of them have fret nibs. Well, let's say for whatever reason you can't make out the fret nib situation, or maybe the guitar doesn't have any binding, so you don't have any fret nibs. Well, let's draw our attention down from there to the bridge situation here. Now you'll look on this Chibson, you'll see that you've got a flathead screwdriver to adjust the posts on the Tune-o-matic bridge. Let me just say this, Gibson will not ever use a flathead screwdriver for their bridge post adjustments. It doesn't matter if it's a 1968 Firebird, a 1975 Les Paul, a 1998 SG, whatever it is, they will not use a flathead screwdriver. On some of the old bridge posts, what you had is a thumb screw to adjust it, and that was it. Or maybe on one of the modern guitars, you'll have not only the thumb wheels, but you'll also have a hex slot to adjust with, but never flathead screwdrivers for the bridge. And you'll notice on this Chibson here, there's not even an option to use thumb wheels. It's pretty much the flathead screwdriver, or that is it. So if you see this bridge, bail out. Well, let's say for whatever reason you can't make heads or tails out of the bridge, but you do get a clear shot of the stop bar. Well, there's one crucial difference on a real stop bar versus a fake stop bar, and that is going to be the slotting for the strings. And I'm not talking about on this side. Generally, you've got a hole there and you stick the ball end of the string in. But on an official Gibson stop bar, on the inside, there's actually a little bit of a slot for the ball as well. That way you can maybe do a wraparound if you want to. If you look at this Chibson on the inside, you'll see that it's just a flat surface with the hole for the string to go through. Now here's a saddle from a Gibson in 1968, and here's another one from 2018. And you'll see that you got slotting on both sides for the ball end of the string. Well, let's say for whatever reason this all checks out, or maybe you can't make it out and you need something else to go off of. Well, I would move on to the back of the headstock here. And there's two very important things to look for here when you're trying to find a fake Gibson guitar. And the first one is the serial number. Now, for whatever reason, a lot of these fake Chibson guitars use the serial number 0171 and then 5 random numbers after that. And there's actually even a number of guitars that use the exact same full serial number. Interestingly enough, I actually wrote Gibson an email about this guitar, and I wanted to know what this serial number actually would have been. And I was very honest with them that I was doing some research for a fake Gibson guitar, and I was just curious what that fake number actually correlated with. And they wrote back, "Hi Ben, thanks for writing us here at Gibson. Serial number 0171606111 is consistent with a Les Paul standard from 2002. Now, of course, that took a few days. Sometimes you don't really have that amount of time when you're researching a guitar online, but this is not a Les Paul standard from 2002. In theory, what this guitar is a Les Paul Custom from 2024. So right there, that number is just totally bogus. Now, the second thing about serial numbers that I was going to talk about is the fact that you can actually make this serial number out. And that's kind of an ironic thing when it comes to the authenticity of these guitars. A lot of the times on Gibson guitars, you can barely make out the serial number because they stamp it into the wood and then they finish it. So check this out. This is a SG standard. This is a real SG standard. And the serial number is stamped in there and then they finish it. And sometimes it's a real struggle to make out what it says. Let's also check out this real Gibson Les Paul Custom, and you can see that the serial code is actually just a 6-digit number on the back that is inked on there, and it says CS and then the 6-digit code, which both of these examples look nothing like this fake guitar, which has a very clear serial number stamped in right there. And the reason is because they finish the guitar, and then one of the last processes is they stamp it in and you get this really nice clear number. Again, like I said, it's almost backwards that you can't make out the real guitar and the fake one is crystal clear. Well, let's take a look at the face of the headstock here. Now, when I look at this face, I can see maybe 4 or 5 different things that definitely look fake to me. First off, the font on the truss rod cover there is all wrong. Second of all, the truss rod cover is mounted at an angle. Third, the split diamond inlay is also mounted slightly angled. Fourth, the split diamond inlay sizing is a little bit wrong. It's actually underneath one of these tuner washers a little bit. Number 5, if you look at the binding, you can see that this is terrible binding work. These lines don't actually even connect as they round these corners. There's like a little gap in them, and some of them are completely offset. Now, I know that Gibson has not always done the best work possible, but I can guarantee when you buy a custom shop guitar, 99 out of 100 times, the binding looks great on them. There's a few other things you can look for as well. These Grover tuners, they look real, they say Grover, they are 100% fake. The backside of them here should have a mirror-like finish. Instead, these have sort of like a hazy finish that you can't really make anything out on. These tuning keys are also 100% fake, just all sharp angles, whereas Grover doesn't really do that. There's a few other ways to tell that these Grover tuners are fake. The washers that space the actual tuning key from the machine head itself. But if you know your tuners, you can even feel these and just tell that they are fake. The switch, you kind of get used to the way those cheap ones sound. This pearl binding going around the edge, I don't think you would ever find that on a Gibson unless it was maybe a one-off or a very, very super special guitar. Certainly not something that somebody would sell for $500 or $1,500. These block inlays, they're not all even. Some of them are at an angle. Some of them are up higher or lower in the actual fret itself. And it's a little bit harder to tell here, but with a ultraviolet light, you actually get sort of like a milky glow on the finish on the Chibson, whereas the Gibson, the nitrocellulose black, just sort of eats up the light. Additionally, and it's kind of hard to photograph here, when you put the ultraviolet light on the fret inlays on the Chibson, they really glow like they're neon. Whereas if you do it on the Gibson Les Paul Custom, you get to see a little bit more of the mother of pearl kind of glow to it. Somehow though, you're still not convinced. You've looked at everything else and maybe you need some more signs. Well, the next best thing you can do is look at the truss rod on the guitar. Here's a picture of a truss rod from a 1924 Gibson L5 guitar. Here's another truss rod from a 1986 Les Paul, and here is another one from the brand new 2024 Gibson Victory guitar. You'll notice they all look the same, and what you're going to find on a Gibson is they've always used a nut or an acorn nut at the end of the truss rod that you would adjust with a hex socket. And what you would find on this Chibson is what you would find on a Epiphone or a lot of other Asian-made guitars, and that you would need a hex key, and you would have to stick it deep inside the truss rod cavity there to make your adjustments. So if the truss rod you're looking at looks a lot like what you're finding on this guitar, you're not dealing with a Gibson. But moving on, let's say you were able to look inside these control cavities there, and you can see what's going on inside the Chibson cavity, and that is definitely not anything you will ever find on the inside of a Gibson guitar, going back to their first electric guitars in the 50s. These are like tiny micro pots in there, and it's just nothing you would ever see, and I doubt anybody would ever replace their proper full-size pots with these dime-sized pots in there. Now, with all that being said, you might be asking, well, is it a terrible guitar? And the truth is, it's actually not a bad guitar, especially at $260. Yeah, you have terrible tuners, the pickups aren't great, it did take a little bit of adjusting, but I was surprised at the quality of it, especially when I compare it to some other sub $500 guitars that I've reviewed on my channel. Now, it's unfortunate that it is trying to be a guitar that it's not, and it seems like the guitar has a double intention, and the first one is to sell a guitar that is claiming it's something it's not, and the secondary intention is for somebody to buy this guitar and try and resell it for much higher than they even paid for it. And that's really one of the big unfortunate things about these Chibson guitars. Now, in the actual official Temu video that I have to do after this, I was writing down some points to it, and one of them that I was making at the end of it was, Slash quite famously used a Gibson copycat guitar that also said Gibson at the top of it and paraded it around as a Gibson Les Paul. And ethically, what's the difference between that guitar and this guitar? And I know there's going to be a lot of different answers to that question. One of them was obviously made by a very skilled luthier who emulated it out of respect, whereas this guitar is probably made on an assembly line, but it doesn't change the fact that both guitars are imposters with Gibson written on the headstock. Anyway, hopefully you learned something from my video. Maybe you're in the market for a Gibson guitar and you don't really know what you're looking for, and maybe that armed you with a little more knowledge to spot out a fake, or maybe you get that thread email in the morning that says, hey, is this guitar real or fake? And now you have a little bit more knowledge to answer it. I'm not sure, but I'm just hoping this video helps someone. Now, there's probably about 50 or 100 more things that are wrong with this guitar, to be honest with you, and if you know what they are, I invite you to leave them in the comments, because I'm always learning as time goes on, and I know some of the other viewers are interested in learning as well. Anyway, my next video after this is going to be a proper review of the Vicer's Les Paul Custom. I did already shoot that just because I didn't know if I was going to be able to get the sticker back on once I took it off. You can check that out if you want to see some more detailed information like the pickup readings or maybe the neck measurements. Anyway, if you like this video, please consider clicking the like button. If you like content like this, please consider clicking the subscribe button. I appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you next time.